Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. Most language tests that I have ever come across in any language are complete and utter, well, they're rubbish. They're really, really bad and do a very poor job of accurately assessing language to any useful degree. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Story Learning Podcast. Great to have you here. Now, today we're talking about exams, proficiency exams. Should you bother with them? Are they worth it? Well, we've got two questions on that in particular. One is from Thura Lin Tet, and I've massacred the pronunciation there. I'm sorry. Thura says, do you believe that English language proficiency tests such as IELTS can always accurately assess language skills? What's your take on this? I want to know your thoughts. You'll get my thoughts. And then Jordan Ma 6486 says, Ollie, thanks for your wonderful insights. Jordan, flattery will get you absolutely everywhere. And it turns out flattery will get your question read out on the podcast as well, so good job. I had a question. Do you think doing official language proficiency exams for personal reasons, work or study, is useful? If not, what do you think is a good measurement for someone to demonstrate their skills in their target language? Thank you. Right, so we've got a couple of questions here, right, within this. We want to know, are exams worth it? Are language exams worth it? And can they accurately assess language skills? This is the question. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. Most language tests that I have ever come across in any language are complete and utter, well, they're rubbish. They're really, really bad and do a very poor job of accurately assessing language to any useful degree. And so what ends up happening is that most people, when they're taking language tests, they end up studying for the test, which is a complete waste of time, right? So basically you'll go and you'll take lessons and your teacher will say, look, here are the things you need to learn in order to pass this test. If you learn this stuff here, then you'll pass the test. So you spend half of your life doing this stuff to pass the test, but have learned very, very little in the process. All you've done is manage to pass the test, which may be useful for you in your life, but is it a good use of language study time? I don't know. Now, there is one test that I found that I think is very good. It's probably not the only one, but there's obviously a limited number of tests I have seen out there. I've had most of my exposure to language tests in the English language world because I used to be a teacher. I used to be an English examiner as well. And I will say that I thought that the IELTS test was very, very good. Now, IELTS is the International English Language Testing System. It's very, very good because I think it actually gives the instructor a lot of discretion. And so when the examiner gives the examiner a lot of discretion, and they train you really, really well on how to assess language. In fact, when I was studying to be an IELTS examiner, I think that was one of the times when I really learned to observe and understand different language proficiency levels most, because the training was really fantastic. So I thought that was really great. And it assesses you across holistic skills in 4 different areas: speaking, reading, listening, and writing. And what was fascinating about doing IELTS was, depending on the culture that you were examining, you would have completely different skill sets. So for example, in the Arab world, people were often great at speaking, but terrible at writing. Whereas in Asia, students were often amazing at writing, but couldn't speak. It was a very interesting reflection of how English was actually used in those different countries. Anyway, I digress. So look, I think, although it is true that most language tests are rubbish, I still think that for the most part, they can be quite a useful tool for you. And the reason is as follows. Progress in a language is very difficult to measure. And if you can't see yourself progressing in a language, then you can get demotivated quite easily. And one of the biggest reasons that people quit languages is that they cannot stay motivated. And they quit. They don't stay motivated because it seems like they're studying endlessly, but they're not making any progress. Now, the thing about studying for an exam is it gives you that tangible benchmark. Whether or not it's actually helping you improve in a language, it gives you a benchmark of sorts. So, for example, I remember when I was living in Japan and I was studying for the Nihongo Noryoku Shiken, it's the JLPT, as it's known, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test. These exams really have the most, the dullest names in existence. They should create something interesting like StoryLearning. Hot tip there for exam creators. Now, the JLPT is not a good test, objectively, but it was quite useful in actually making the Japanese language quantifiable, because one of the things that you need to do for Japanese in particular is you have to learn kanji. And kanji is the Chinese characters. There's a lot of them to learn. And it can seem, when you're staring up at that list of 2,000 odd kanji that you have to learn, it can seem like a bit of an unsurmountable task. Unsurmountable or insurmountable? It's insurmountable, isn't it? Sometimes you don't really know what a word is until you hear yourself saying it. So it can seem like a huge mountain to climb. But the JLPT was broken down into, when I first did it, it was in 4 levels. Now I think it's 5 levels. And they say, right, for this level, you have to learn these specific kanji. And I know the HSK in Chinese does the same thing, and it can give you a benchmark. So for someone who's having trouble staying motivated, staying disciplined, to know that, right, in this level right here, to pass my exam, I just got to learn these 100 kanji and I'm going to be fine. Therefore, I'm going to apply myself and study because I know what to do and it's achievable and I've got 3 months to do it. That's very useful. And so what I noticed about exam students in general is that they do tend to work a lot harder. As anyone who's taught languages before will know, there's a world of difference between a class of students who are just learning like general Spanish or general French versus those who are learning exam French or exam Spanish or whatever. And the reason is just in the psychology of studying for the test. So I do think that they're a pretty useful tool. I just would be I just wouldn't put much stock in them to actually directly improve your proficiency level. I think that in terms of learning things that require rote memorization, like Chinese characters, for example, yeah, it can be useful. Similarly, if you're going to spend, dozens and dozens of hours practicing reading and practicing listening, well, that's only going to be a good thing. It's not going to be a bad thing. So I think that can be helpful as well. So I think it's about knowing your own motivation. But you really can't put all that much store in them. I said in another episode, I've had friends or people that I've known who have said, I passed the C2 exam in this language, but then we speak in the language, and they're absolutely nowhere. So I just, when I see that happening, I just ask myself the question: well, what objectively is the point of this? Like, if you need this exam to, if you've got to get this exam because you want to go to university in Spain, or your employer requires you to do it, then fine, just go ahead and do it. It's going to be a useful thing. But then on the other hand, sometimes it's useful. Like, if you show me someone who's got the JLPT level 1, then I will show you someone who's very, very good at Japanese. Doesn't necessarily mean they're great at speaking. Doesn't necessarily mean they're great at listening either. But you've got someone who is significantly advanced in the language. So, as usual with most things, it kind of comes down to your motivation. If you find that you enjoy it and it's helping you stick to your studying and make some progress, I would go for it, absolutely, because the alternative is doing nothing or doing something that doesn't motivate you. So I hope that's helpful. And on the topic of goals, it is super important to set goals if you want to stay motivated. I've prepared a language goal planner that helps you articulate what your study goals are and then actually set a series of little mini goals that will help you get to that big goal. There's a world of difference between someone who decides on a goal for their language learning and someone who doesn't. There's a world of difference between how much progress that person makes. So if you would like to get some help to determine your goals and track your progress, there's a link in the description where you can download my free language goal planner. I hope you find that useful. So thanks Jordan and Thora for your questions, and I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast.